Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. What an exciting panel. Asher Fredman, you and I have been friends for quite some time, going back to days when you were senior advisor in the Israeli government, and working with Gilad Ardan, who was the speaker at the 2018 Arise Summit, before he was sent to be Israel's ambassador to the United Nations and to the United States. So great to have you with us. And you left a very important position in the Israeli government to go into your position now as a founding member of the UAE-Israel Business Council, and then also working with the Gulf Israel Green Ventures. What is it about what's taking place now that is so exciting from a business perspective that you want to dedicate your life to this work now?
Thank you, Calev, and it's great to be here. And there's just been incredible outpouring of excitement that we've seen from both sides since the announcement of the Abraham Accords on the part of entrepreneurs and innovators and companies and investors and just everyday people. The excitement has to do also with the business opportunities, which are very extensive, and I'll go into that in a second, but also has to do with the opportunity to build people-to-people peace, which is the secret, really, the secret sauce for building a better future for the region. Now, the reason for the tremendous excitement on the business side, I believe, is because the synergies are apparent to everybody. And when you take, on the one hand, the incredible vision of the Emirati leadership, the way they've transformed the country into a global leader in such a short time, and you look at the capabilities of the Emirati people, if you look at the endless examples, the future sustainable cities like Masdar City, the region's first carbon capture plants, green hydrogen plants, the Expo, and a remarkable international gathering of cultures and people. And then on the other hand, you take Israel, which is well known for its innovative startup culture, its creative out-of-the-box thinking. When you put those two together, that's really kind of a transformative impact on our economies, on our societies, on our region. And the cooperation, the collaboration that's going to come out of this joining together, this new peace, is going to have an impact not only on our region, but remember, there are 2 billion people living in arid and semi-arid regions around the world. So the innovation and the cooperation coming out of this new partnership is going to have impacts far beyond our bilateral relationship.
And could you speak for a minute into green ventures? I mean, why are you focusing your efforts right now not only on this relationship, but specifically in the area of green tech?
So this is an area that both Israel and the Israeli government, the Emirati leadership and the Emirati government, and the international community is increasingly prioritizing. We're facing similar challenges. How do you build a sustainable and healthy future while accelerating your economy? How do you ensure food security and resilience? How do you ensure that we can make our buildings in our cities more energy efficient and more pleasant to live in? These are challenges that we are all facing. In Israel, we have over 600 exciting clean tech startups. The UAE is investing quite a bit in developing their own clean tech and green tech ecosystem, and therefore the potential is tremendous, both from a business perspective and for the quality of life and well-being of our people in this region.
I love that. We talk a lot at Arise about doing well by doing good. So how can we tackle some of the greatest crises facing humanity in a commercially viable way, which is a win-win-win, right? Because you're creating jobs, you're doing business, but then you're also, helping people around the globe. And if I could turn to you, Mr. Abdullah Bakir, the president of the EAU Israel Business Council. I don't know if you call that UIBCA yet, but maybe eventually we'll refer to it as that. Could you tell me, as a businessman from the the United Arab Emirates, what does this relationship mean to you, and what do you see as the big wins that are possible for your economy and for your business sector?
Well, thank you very much first for hosting me to this very special event, which it is one of those platforms that educates people about what's going on between these two relationships. I think my colleague Asher Fredman has covered very large and wide part of the question. But again, me as an Emirati and being part of this relationship, First of all, it is very special because looking at the history and coming to what we are today, we feel privileged for several reasons. First of all, we are part of making new history between the two countries, and not only for two countries. We're not talking today about the Israelis or Emiratis or Jews and Arabs. We're talking about every religion in the region, every color, every tradition that we live here. In Dubai, for example, or UAE, we have over 200 nationalities living together. That kind of platform, that kind of energy that when you bring together, of course, it has a big impact on the future for our kids or our neighbors. What's going on around us, it has a good impact on them. Now, when we talk about what it means to me as Abdullah, of course, it means a lot. It means that today I have passed, and thanks to my government and thanks to the UAE leaders that took this very brave step within the political area to recognize the relationship between UAE and Israel, to normalize it, and to look forward for a better future. And obviously this will open many doors and many sectors and many platforms of discussion to understand each other better. Yeah. And as we see today, we see other countries that have interest to follow the steps of the UAE and Israel. We see people are asking us, we get, me and my colleagues, Asher and other colleagues in the Business Council, we get calls every day, not from the UAE and Israel. We get calls from all over the world. People are asking about this relationship. How is it going? What's happening? So I think, I believe that this is very special for me as Abdullah, because I can see a better future for my kids, for my family, for my country. So that's how I can describe it.
Fantastic, and thank you for your work. I have to ask you as an Israeli, that as you stepped into this position and I would say sort of become a bridge for culture and for business, what was the thing that you were surprised by the first time that you started doing business with Israelis? What would you say was kind of like a surprising first impression for you?
Well, I can tell you that after the interview, but for now I can mention, I mean, to be honest, it was a really new relationship. Everybody was looking forward to understand each other. I mean, some of us, we had a relationship with each other had before the Abraham Accords and peace agreement signed, but in general, everybody was trying to understand the culture, the religion, what to do, what not to do, and other kind of thing. I think at the Business Council, at the UAE Israel Business Council, with myself and my colleagues and the founders of the UAE Israel Business Council, we decided from day one to step ahead and to start educating people around us in terms in the business sector or on the individual sector, on religious sector. So we kind of put people together to understand and to create that understanding level between the two sectors. And of course, I always say it in every interview, I say it's a new dating relationship. So everybody tries to take out the best of them at the beginning. And then you realize that the relationship is moving, you start working on it for future. And as we see also in the business sector, we see opening flights between UAE and Israel has facilitated a lot, has created that bridge for people to come, get on the flight. It's 2.5 or 3 hours flight. People can go to Israel and come to UAE and get to know each other. We see today in Dubai, you see Israelis walking in the mall, they see Emiratis, hi, hello, and they start inviting each other for a coffee to know and understand each other better.
Fantastic. I love the way that business kind of, in some ways, goes before politics as just a fantastic platform for peaceful coexistence and collaboration. It's so wonderful. Turning to you, Dr. Sabah Al-Binali, thank you so much for joining us today. And you also, I mean, I looked at your very, very impressive bio, and I saw that you've sold several companies, that you've been in investment banking and private equity sector for many years. I have a very successful career working with some of the largest banks in the world, and now you're starting to work with Our Crowd. Now, for Israelis, Our Crowd is an amazing company. John Medved is somewhat of a local hero over here in Jerusalem. But from many of our viewers understand financial markets, are into investment banking. Be interesting to hear your perspective on the Israeli startup scene and why this is an area that you feel like you want to invest your life in. And what have you discovered that maybe some of our viewers may not have learned yet about this ecosystem?
Yeah, I think so. I was always a fan of startups and venture investing. With Israel, which is second to only the U.S. in GDP per capita invested into startups. It's very exciting that such a market became available to us. That is so close. Where you can go visit and work. It's interesting. It was an American who put Jonathan and I together. When John Medved heard about the Abraham Accords, he started asking his friends in the States, in New York in particular, I need to find an Emirati to work with. I was asking my friends, I need to find an Israeli company to work with. And one of those friends happened to be a mutual friend of both of us. I think this, I don't have to explain why Israel is the startup nation. I think this is well known. It's just that this is now a new market that is a neighbor, 2.5-hour flight away, easy to visit. And the possibilities are vast, really, to build on these two economies opening up to each other.
Is Our Crowd making progress in the Emirates? Are you seeing movement? Are you seeing growing interest?
It certainly is. So we received our license from the Abu Dhabi Global Markets FSRA as a VC fund manager a few months ago. We're building up operationally. We're doing DD on companies that we can invest in and funds, because we invest in both companies and funds. And as you may know, Our Crowd is not just a VC investor, but is also a fintech, allowing or democratizing the access to venture investing at much smaller sizes than one would normally speak about. It depends on each region, between 50,000 to 300,000, but that's still far less than the 1 million to 10 million minimum ticket sizes. And there's a lot of interest in this, because it's not just about using the Our Crowd platform to invest in Israel. As we get regulated onto the mainland, we can allow angel investors in the Middle East to invest in startups in the Middle East that might have been prohibitively large check sizes before, but now that they can come in at smaller check sizes. They'd have to be accredited. We have to finish all the regulatory things, but so it's also bringing that access to venture investing both into Israel and to the rest of the Middle East.
Fantastic. Thank you for your work, and more power to you. I'd like to shift back to Asher, if I could, with the Gulf Israel Green Ventures. Do you have an exciting story? If you can give an example of a renewable energy project that your platform is now investing in, and that might be an exciting opportunity for other people who are with us today.
I think there are a lot of exciting opportunities. As an example, we are now working on a partnership with Masdar City, which is this incredible future sustainable city built in Abu Dhabi. And they obviously are working on a number of different vectors. So whether it's low emissions building, low carbon mobility, natural cooling and heating. And what we're working on now together is to say, okay, you have these both incredible operations within Masdar City. You also have numerous companies, institutions, hubs within the city. Where can we bring Israeli innovation to be integrated into what's going on here? And then maybe from here to other parts of the UAE. I'll also just mention that one area that Israelis often aren't thinking of enough yet is beyond Abu Dhabi and Dubai in the Northern Emirates, the northern part of the UAE, there are a lot of opportunities, especially in the field of renewable energy. And we're in touch with some of the government authorities there. And we're very interested in using this land that they have for renewable energy projects. But closer to Dubai, I'll give another example. I recently visited one of the largest cement companies in Dubai. I was probably the first Israeli ever to be walking around the cement plant there. They poured the cement for the Burj Khalifa and some of the other iconic buildings. And there, because of the UAE's green building regulations and because of market forces, they're interested in more sustainable building materials. I've connected them with academics here in Israel, some of Israel's world-leading desert research institutes who have expertise in these areas. And we're exploring some very interesting cooperation. My focus has been on clean tech, although to be honest, because of the interest and demand, we're also expanding. For example, in healthcare, the UAE is investing very much in its hospital system and its home healthcare for the elderly. And we've been approached by various Emirati companies, for example, saying, hey, we're familiar with French medical technology or Canadian medical technology or Indian, but we know that Israel is a leader in this field as well. What do you have for us? So it's just been an amazing journey where one thing has come to the next. And I was just thinking back to that 2018 conference that I had the privilege of attending and the excitement of the people who were there and the excitement of the people that you brought together there. And I really think that the way that enthusiasm that we saw from the participants and from the organizers for strengthening the Israel-America bond via business can be expanded to strengthening the Abraham Accords bond and the U.S.-Israel Middle Eastern bond via business and commerce as well.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, which I think is just a good time to transition back to you, Abdallah, Mr. Bakir. You talked a little bit about the beginning foundational stages of building out the business council. And a lot of the people who are viewing this are international, but thousands of international businessmen who are, and women, business people, who are not necessarily Israelis, not necessarily from your region, but they're looking to somehow support efforts, business efforts, and profitable business efforts. What would you say are kind of the next steps? Where would you like to see the work of the council go, to see your work go over the next 2 to 5 years? To make sure that these opportunities are being properly presented to people who want to get engaged and are really succeeding. What do you see as those next stages to take us there?
Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a very unique relationship that we have created an example for the whole world to follow the steps. Not only to normalizing the relationships only, but what's next? It was very important for us at the Business Council, myself with our co-founder, Deputy Mayor Fleur Hassan Naoum, Dorian Barak, Asher, and the rest of the team, to see once we start this Business Council, where are we heading for the next 5 years? Now, when you come and look into the UAE trade and business, it always created a cosmopolitan platform for all the countries, for all business sectors to come and basically practice their activities in the region. And they have created a hub to connect all those companies with the neighboring countries in Middle East and Asia. It was, of course, for many reasons. When we talk about the logistics, you see today we have one of the largest ports of the Middle East and the region that facilitates all those shipments, logistics through this, and the airports, of course, Dubai airports, Abu Dhabi airports, Sharjah airports. Those kind of things have really facilitated a lot for the coming future. Now, when we look into the investments, we look into the agriculture, as Asher mentioned, we look at the startups, as Sabah mentioned. We see a lot of those people coming to Dubai and coming to the UAE, trying to find partnership investments, not only with Israelis and Emiratis. We see a lot of Indian startups. We see a lot of American, Swiss, or Italian. They come to the UAE and meet each other over here. Now, our role in the Business Council, we try to kind of filter those kind of relationships and find the right opportunities of investment. And we try to facilitate that relationship towards the future. Now, How do we facilitate? We see where is our strength. Obviously, each one of us has come from a different background. That's where the unique relationship we have within the business council. We try to facilitate whether in investment banking or financial institutes. Asher today is focusing on the agriculture, on the new renewable energy, and he has a wild relationship into this sector worldwide, not only in the UAE and Israel. So we try to educate also the investors that they come, that this is what you need to do, this is what you need to look at, and we also connect them with the right partners in the market, which is very important. We don't want people to come either in Israel or any other companies or countries to come to the UAE and get into circles and not knowing where they're heading. So we try to educate them with setting up their companies, with their banking facilities or banking system that they need to follow, and basically the right partner for them. We try to do that at the first stage. Then once the partnership is built, then we monitor that partnership. We make sure that it's going into the right path, as you say.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure that we put all of your contact information of the council, make that available for our members, so that if those who want to start getting engaged in the UAE and interacting with the council will be able to do that. Yeah, I appreciate that very much. Dr. Sabah, coming back to you, beyond the setting up the infrastructure to allow, like you said, the democratization of investments and getting your licensing down there, etc. It seems to me that there would also be a business development play, a significant business development play for our crowd and for the Israeli startup scene in your region. Is there an effort being made right now to bring more startups, as I'm talking about selling their products and their solutions, more Israeli startups into the EAU and the Gulf region? Or even setting up testing labs, etc. At the business level, not just the investment level. What do you see at that level?
We're seeing that activity. Business development is actually a function within our crowd. There's a whole department that helps our portfolio companies business development, and there's two levels. One level is the sales and distribution of products and services of our startups into the region, and we're working on several of those, at least a dozen that I'm aware of. It's a bit too early to announce anything, but you should be hearing things in the first half of next year. I think what is even more exciting is how startups, Israeli startups, can work with the businesses in the UAE and use the UAE not as an end market, but as a gateway into not just the rest of the Middle East, but into Africa, Southeast Asia, these large economies such as Indonesia and Malaysia and so on, where the UAE has a comparative advantage in terms of trade and understanding those economies to Israeli businessmen. We at our crowd believe very strongly that we're going to see the synergy, it can be captured by the idea of startup in Israel scale up in the UAE. If you're a startup, regardless of where you are in the world, you'd like to immediately jump when you leave your own economy to the United States. And if you can do that, then, that's great. But not everyone can do that in one step. And entering, within a 4-hour flight, you have about 3 billion people from the UAE. We're highly integrated. We have the manufacturing makes a lot of sense. Again, as a comparative advantage, the logistics, supply chain, and fulfillment. And again, another comparative advantage is that our work visa system is very, very open. It's very easy to hire anyone from anywhere around the world to come here and work. So that flexibility has actually led to our crowd itself investigating whether to set up its global innovation center in the UAE.
Very interesting, and I can tell you that that our work visa situation in Israel is not simple, and there's probably a lot that we could learn from you and benefit from your knowledge in that area. If I would like to turn back to you, Abdullah, if I could, and just I know as a businessman when the Abraham Accords were signed, I think it was shortly prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I remember at that time, a lot of people were saying, we need to either start a tourism company or invest in tourism because there's going to be a massive amount of tourism between, the Emirates and Israel. And of course, COVID kind of put the brakes on to a certain extent tourism around the world. Where do you see that going now? Do you see that now opening up? I understand that Israelis don't need a special visa to enter the Emirates. Is that right? And would you see this as still a very exciting area that people should be looking at as potential business involvement and investment?
Well, as we know, the COVID was a worldwide pandemic, so we had to acknowledge that pandemic, live with it, and try to deal with it and get rid of it, of course. And as you see, a few days back, there was an article between the two governments signed a COVID-19 test agreements and recognizing the vaccines between the two governments. That was obviously a big step between the two governments within a very short period. It's just 1 year since we signed the peace agreement, since September 2020. That's one thing. The second thing is also if you look into the facilities at the Dubai airports or Abu Dhabi airport, Sharjah airports, how they made things easier for people to come get their COVID test, and it is just less than 30 minutes and you're out. You're in Dubai Mall, having a good time there, rather than when you see in the other airports very complicated restrictions. You go for quarantines, you stay there and the laws or regulations are not very clear for everyone. But I think with the Israelis and the Emiratis, with this unique relationship, they have reached in a very short period to agree on certain regulations between the two governments and facilitate those to make people's lives easier to come to Dubai or to come to Abu Dhabi or to the UAE or Israel as well. Now, of course, we do have. We can't say we are COVID-free 100%, but we are working together towards that. To achieve that point. When it comes to the business sector, of course, people will still come. If there is an opportunity of business, people will still fly, will come, and they don't mind staying in quarantine for 2 or 3 days. And if they can close a big dollar sign business opportunity, that will pay off for it. Now, what do we do in future? That's another thing that I'm sure, and I'm aware also of the governments that they are, ministers are meeting on regular basis. We had the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Health of UAE have met through Zoom last week, and they have agreed on many things. Some of them, some points are not announced yet, but we know that there are good news coming very soon. The Minister of Interior from Israel was here a few weeks back in Dubai and the UAE. She met with our Minister of Interior, Sheikh Saif bin Zayed. They have agreed on many security level arrangement between the two countries. So that also shows that the relationship is developing. And the COVID-19 has not stopped developing the relationship. Today we have, with this all digital world that made also, that's the benefit of the digital world today. You don't need to come and see somebody face to face. Through Zoom, you can sign an agreement. You can reach to certain agreements together, of course, and it facilitates and saves a lot of time. So I think that's the benefit between the two governments that have used so far, and they have facilitate that towards the benefits of those two countries.
That's wonderful. And I just want to thank the three of you gentlemen for your amazing efforts and what you're working on. You know, as you were speaking, Abdallah, I was thinking to myself, you know, because of all the checks that you have to do before and after you get on an airplane, probably flying back and forth from Israel to the Emirates is one of the safest things you can do today. And I could also think of many worse things than spending a couple days in quarantine down in Dubai or one of your other Emirates. And so, yeah, I mean, thank God that COVID-19 hasn't slowed things down and that we're all moving forward. And I just want to wrap things up by thanking you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to speak to the Arise community. You've enlightened us today and really even boosted our hope to see just the amazing developments that are taking place since the Abraham Accords. So thank you and blessings to you. We look forward to seeing you, our Emirati friends, here in Israel sooner than later. Arise is an alliance of people around the world who cherish the Hebrew values of improving the quality of human life and protecting human life through business in a commercially viable way. In short, we believe in doing well by doing good. And I want to invite you today to join the Arise Alliance. Once you become a member of our alliance, you'll receive quarterly gift boxes with really cool gifts from Israel that you and your family are going to love. And it's a direct way of helping small Israeli businesses that are creating fantastic products. You're going to receive exclusive access to some really exciting content, including our Hebrew Word of the Month and also our featured Business of the Month, where I go into Israeli companies and interview some entrepreneurs and business leaders that are creating amazing technologies, tackling crises facing humanity and making life better. And this will expose you to some really exciting investment opportunities. You'll also receive free access to all of our events, including the Arise Quarterly Digital Summits, which are just fantastic networking opportunities where you can connect your business to other like-minded entrepreneurs. Let's discover together what is our part to play in Tikkun Olam as we're working together to fix this world. So make sure you're joined today. Welcome to the Arise Alliance.